The illusion of closeness. Why they want you, but can't keep you. They held your hand, but only loosely. They smiled, but something in their eyes never softened. You felt like you were standing in front of a closed door, knocking, hoping, waiting for them to let you in. But the truth is, they never intended to. The illusion begins with attraction, not intimacy. Avoidants are not people who hate love. In fact, many are drawn to it intensely. They crave connection. They want to be wanted. But here's the paradox. They chase the feeling of love, while avoiding the risk of being loved. You feel chosen. You feel seen. You feel special. At first, and then slowly, almost imperceptibly, they start to pull back. What's really happening inside the avoidant mind? To understand why they push you away, you must understand what closeness means to someone with avoidant attachment. For the securely attached, closeness is warmth. For the anxious, it's survival. But for the avoidant, closeness feels like entrapment. Intimacy feels like suffocation. Being loved feels like losing control. The moment they sense you're getting too close, even if you're kind, calm, and loving, their nervous system interprets it as danger, not because of you, but because of what love meant in their childhood. Expectations they couldn't meet, conditional affection, emotional overwhelm, rejection when they were most vulnerable, the wall you can't see, but feel avoidants build walls, not out of malice, but necessity. It's how they protect the last fragile pieces of themselves. Because at some point, they learned, it's safer to be alone than to need someone who might hurt me. So they keep you at arm's length. They deflect when things get serious. They joke when you express real emotion. They change the subject when you bring up us. They withdraw after a deep moment of connection. You think you're imagining it. You question your worth. You try harder. But the harder you try, the further they retreat. The emotional boomerang effect. Here's the part that's hardest to accept. Avoidants don't mean to hurt you, but they will, again and again, because they're fighting a war inside themselves. One part of them desperately wants love. The other part is screaming, run! So the moment things get real, they stop texting as much. They seem bored or distant. They complain about needing space. They pick fights over nothing. And if you confront them, they'll either shut down completely or accuse you of being too emotional, too needy, or controlling. This is how the cycle begins. It's subtle, but it's devastating. The trap for the empathetic partner. If you're someone who is deeply empathetic, someone who believes in healing, who sees their pain underneath the mask, you're the most likely to stay. Because you don't just see their wounds, you want to heal them. But here's the dangerous truth. Love cannot cure someone who keeps running from it. You can't outlove their trauma. You can't stay soft enough to soothe someone who hardens every time they're touched emotionally. The push-away reflex. Why avoidants destroy the very thing they long for? They love the beginning, the spark, the chase. But when love turns into something real, something that asks for presence, they start looking for the exit. Why does real love scare them? Avoidants often confuse intensity with intimacy. The thrill of attraction is safe. It's about fantasy, not risk. The early romance stage doesn't demand vulnerability, just performance. But when love deepens, it requires openness, truth, and emotional surrender, and that's where the panic sets in. Real love is confronting. It forces them to deal with parts of themselves they've locked away. So what do? They push you away. Not because you've changed, but because the relationship has moved into territory that terrifies them. The sabotage cycle. Avoidants aren't just afraid of being loved, they're afraid of being seen. So they sabotage in patterns that seem irrational but are deeply wired. 1. They pick fights over small things. Your tone, a glance, an innocent comment becomes a problem. This gives them a reason to disconnect, to justify the emotional retreat too. They say, "I need space," after moments of intimacy. Right after a deep talk or a vulnerable night together, they vanish. This isn't coincidence, it's survival 3. They blame you for their discomfort. "You're too much. You're overwhelming me." Translation: "You're making me feel things I don't know how to handle." The internal conflict they can't explain. Inside every avoidant is a war between two parts. One part craves closeness, the other part fears annihilation through it. This isn't conscious. Many avoidants don't even know why they suddenly lose interest, feel irritated, or numb out. But their nervous system is sounding an alarm. To them, love is not peace, it's danger. And when the body feels unsafe, the mind creates reasons to flee. You start to blame yourself. Here's where the damage spreads to you. You question your worth. You analyze every word, every message, every silence. You wonder what you did wrong. But the truth is, you didn't break it. They're fighting ghosts you can't see. The moment love demands they feel, they shut the door. And what's cruel is, they rarely admit this. Instead, they might say, "I just don't feel the spark anymore. I'm not ready for something serious. You deserve better," while leaving you feeling worthless. The truth behind their emotional numbing. Many avoidants were emotionally overwhelmed as children, so they developed a brilliant survival strategy. Don't feel too much, don't need too much, don't get too close. Now, as adults, when intimacy asks them to feel, they shut down, mentally, emotionally, even physically. That's why they seem cold, robotic, or distracted during emotional moments. It's not because they don't care, it's because caring makes them panic. And yet, they miss you. Here's the cruel irony. After pushing you away, after making you feel unwanted, they often miss you. But they won't say it. They might circle back subtly, a like on your post, a vague text, or a sudden "hey" out of nowhere. Because the avoidant is not free from feeling. They're just trapped inside fear. The fear of being needed. Why avoidants interpret love as a burden. To you, love means sharing the weight. To them, it feels like carrying the world alone. You ask for closeness, and they hear pressure. You need reassurance, and they feel trapped. You offer love, and they brace for war. Why avoidants see emotional needs as threats. Avoidants learned, often in childhood, that being needed came at a cost. Maybe they had to parent their own parents, emotionally perform perfectly to receive love, hide their feelings to avoid punishment, be strong because no one else was. So now, as adults, love feels like a job description instead of a joy. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding the burden of being responsible for your feelings. The unspoken belief, if you need me, you'll drain me. In the avoidant mind, closeness is exhausting. Even small requests, a text reply, a check-in, a moment of emotional vulnerability, feel like pressure. Because for them, if I respond, I'm trapped. If I don't, I'm cruel. Either way, I lose. This isn't about you asking for too much. It's about them having no emotional bandwidth to give, because they never learned that giving doesn't have to mean losing themselves. Why they shut down when you're vulnerable. You cry, they go silent. You share your needs, they get distant. You ask for support, they act annoyed or overwhelmed, not because they're heartless, but because vulnerability activates their own repressed emotions. And they don't know how to sit in that space. It's like asking someone who's afraid of water to swim with you in a storm. They feel like they'll drown in your needs because they never learned how to handle their own. The strong, independent mask. Avoidants often pride themselves on being self-reliant. They don't ask for much. They don't expect much. They pretend not to feel much. It's not strength. It's a defense mechanism. So when you, the partner, begin to open up emotionally, they might interpret it as, "You're too dependent. You're trying to control me. You're making me responsible for your happiness." But in reality, you're doing what real intimacy requires: connection. To them, though, connection feels like obligation. And obligation reminds them of all the emotional labor they were never equipped to carry. The tragedy of misinterpretation. You think, why won't they be there for me? Why does it feel like a crime to have needs? Why do I feel ashamed for wanting love? They think, if I let you in, I'll disappear. If I try to help you, I'll fail and be blamed. If I give too much, I'll never get myself back. This leads to a silent, devastating war. You feel unloved. They feel unsafe. Both of you feel alone. When you become too much for them, avoidants are hypersensitive to emotional demands. Even simple things like wanting to talk about the relationship, needing comfort during a bad day, asking for clarity or commitment can trigger their push-away reflex. You're labeled needy, clingy, dramatic. Not because you are, but because your needs reveal their incapacity, the love they can't receive, and why it's never about you. You gave them everything: patience, loyalty, compassion, and still, they couldn't accept it. Not because your love wasn't real, but because it touched a wound they couldn't face. Why avoidants can't truly receive love. You offer love. They flinch. You give presents. They disappear. You stay steady. They start to test your limits. Why? Because receiving love requires feeling worthy of it, and avoidants, deep down, often don't. The wall they don't realize they built. When someone grows up in an environment where love was conditional, inconsistent, manipulative, or simply absent, they internalize a simple rule: love is dangerous. It either controls me or abandons me. So they build emotional walls. But here's the twist. They don't just keep you out. They keep themselves locked inside. No matter how gently you love them, it will still feel like a threat. Because the more authentic the love, the closer it gets to the very part of them they're trying to hide. The wound behind their distance. At the core of most avoidant behavior is an old, silent wound. I'm not enough. I'm not lovable unless I perform. If I let you love me, you'll see how broken I am. So when you give real love, steady, unconditional, present, it becomes unbearable. Not because it's bad, but because it contradicts everything they believe about themselves. When you become the mirror. They can't face you think you're offering love. But to them, you become a mirror. A mirror that reflects their fear of inadequacy, their shame, their belief that they will never be enough for real intimacy. So instead of softening into the relationship, they retreat, they ghost, they withdraw, they act cold, or worse, they provoke a breakup. It's not you. It's what you represent, the truth they've spent years avoiding. The pattern. They keep repeating. Avoidants often chase people who are emotionally unavailable, critical detached, or just as avoidant, because these relationships confirm their inner narrative. See? Love doesn't last. People always pull away. I was right not to trust anyone. But when you break that cycle, when you're consistent, kind, and present, you threaten the script. And instead of embracing that change, they try to rewrite you. by making you the problem. You're too intense. You're suffocating. You're expecting too much, when in reality, all you ever did was show up with open hands. The emotional reversal. You started as the calm presence, the loving one, the safe space, but now you're walking on eggshells. You're second-guessing yourself. You feel like you're chasing instead of being met. That's what happens when you love someone who hasn't made peace with being loved. The black hole of unworthiness. Avoidants often live with a hidden belief. If you knew the real me, you'd leave. So even when love is freely given, they can't receive it. It's like pouring sunlight into a black hole. It disappears, swallowed by silence and fear. They might even accuse you of having an agenda, being manipulative, wanting something in return. Because in their mind, love always has strings. They don't know how to accept something real because they've only ever known love that cost them something. Why they always leave first, and how to break the cycle. They leave before you can leave them. They disappear before you can hurt them. They shut the door before you ever realize it was closing. And somehow, they make it feel like you caused it all. Why avoidants exit before it gets real. In the early days, they might be charming, affectionate, curious, even open. But as the emotional connection deepens, they begin to feel what they fear most. Scene-dependent, exposed, needed. That's when the exit plan kicks in. Because for them, closeness equals danger. And the only way to feel safe again is to run. The mental logic. I'd rather end it than be abandoned. Avoidants are not just afraid of intimacy. They are terrified of rejection after intimacy. So they leave first. Not because you hurt them, not because they stopped caring, but because they believe, if I don't leave now, you'll hurt me later. It's preemptive heartbreak, a form of emotional control, and tragically it feels safer to destroy a good thing than to risk being destroyed by it. How they make you feel like it's your fault. Avoidants often exit in confusing ways. Sudden silence, picking fights, disappearing emotionally, blaming you for expecting too much. But here's the truth. It's easier for them to make you wrong than to face their own emotional incapacity. Because if they admitted they were afraid, they'd have to feel shame. And avoidance will do anything to avoid that. The cycle repeats you're left with. Confusion, self-doubt, endless overthinking, an ache for closure that never comes. Meanwhile, the avoidant quietly resets. Sometimes they reappear, sometimes not. But even if they return, the pattern doesn't change. Because what needs to change isn't the relationship, it's the relationship they have with themselves. So, how do you break the cycle? If you're the one loving an avoidant, understand this. You can't love them into healing. You can't become small enough, soft enough, silent enough to avoid triggering their fear of connection. Here's what you can do. 1. Stop taking their distance. Personally, their pullbacks are about them, not you. You did not cause their shutdown. Their fear existed long before you arrived. 2. Honor your needs. You deserve consistency. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve a love that stays when it gets real. Don't shrink your emotional needs just to be easier to love. 3. Recognize the signs. Early. The sooner you spot avoidant behavior, the sooner you can decide, do I stay and self-abandon, or do I step away and reclaim my peace? 4th, let go with love, not bitterness. Avoidants don't act this way to hurt you. They act this way because they are still hurting, from wounds they haven't faced. You can grieve them, miss them, even wish it could have worked, but don't chase what refuses to receive you. 5. Choose relationships where love can flow. Both ways. Love is not meant to be a guessing game, or a puzzle, or a performance. Real love lands, it breathes, it grows, and most importantly, it stays. Final words. They didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because they couldn't hold something real. Your love was never the problem, but it might have been too honest, too vulnerable, too unfiltered for someone still hiding from themselves. And that's not your burden to carry.